Just imagine 6 degrees Celsius water, but 50 centimeters deep. A fog that is so thick I could not see where the water was ending. Cars passing by just behind me. A new spot, and no good reason to stay. So you may wonder, why didn't I leave? I almost walked away. And then the real question, what happens if you do it anyway? Not when it's beautiful, not when the light is perfect, but when everything is technically wrong. This is the most imperfect cold plunge I have ever done. Let me show you what happened. Before I continue, this channel is about cold plunges and quiet observations of life by the Danish water. If something about cold water brought you here, welcome. So I sat down in that freezing water, and I've never been more certain it was the right thing to do. This spot is along the Danish coastline, north of Copenhagen. You have a small pier, a parking lot just beside, and a thin line of wood reaching into grey water. And the fog today was not beautiful, it was not cinematic, it was just thick. The kind that softens everything at the edges. I've tried it before, and that was my second time trying fog. And you could not tell where the sea stopped and where the sky started. There was just the same grey. 5 degrees in the air, that's 41 Fahrenheit. The first thing I noticed was the sound, not the water, not the wind, but boats. Somewhere out there were foghorns coming through the mist in the long, low notes. You could not see them, only hear them. And it felt like the sound belonged to a different dimension. And the damp, not the rain, just that moisture suspending in the air. The kind that finds its way into your collar, into your sleeves, and my jacket was already wet before I even reached the water. So I walked to the end of the pier and looked down. About 50 centimeters or maybe less. It's not the water you plunge into, it is the water you negotiate with. I stood there for a while, because if I tried to lie flat, I would scrape the bottom. If I tried to swim, I would be pushing myself across the sand. So there was no dignified way, to be honest, to do this. And behind me, cars. Not a lot, but just that regular traffic. The wet sound of tires on asphalt. 50 meters at max, maybe less. And normally when I cold plunge, there is only water, maybe wind, sometimes birds. But mostly just the sea. Here, I had to actively ignore things. Choose not to hear the road, choose not to see the fog, but choose to stay present. And that is not usually part of it. I looked at the water again, the horizon which I could not see, and I sat down. Sitting in cold water is different from standing. When you stand, you go in fast, one motion, and the cold hits all at once. It is a shock, but it is just one shock. On the other hand, when you sit, the cold climbs, it comes up to your legs, then your waist, then your ribs, and it gives you time to feel each new inch. And that is not the most comfortable, if I'm truly honest here. My body was doing the work. My mind was still catching up. Everything goes super fast at that temperature, so I had to be focused. And back to my question earlier on, you may ask, why didn't I leave? Because this is where the perfection ends in most cold plunge videos. I got out and the pier was covered in wet sand, not a dusting one, wet, sticky, everywhere. I do not own a changing robe, never bought one. So changing means standing there in 5 degrees Celsius air, trying to dry my skin. You put one foot on your towel and the towel is immediately wet. Wet from the pier, wet from your foot. nothing really stays dry. Trying to put on socks when your feet are both wet and sandy, and on top of that your cold fingers are not helping either. My hands were not numb yet, they were just a bit clumsy. That kind of clumsy if you've been cold plunging where a zipper feels like a puzzle. And while I was doing this, trying to get the after effect of my cold plunge, there were still cars going at it. There was still that thick fog. And whoever may have been driving or walking past had no idea that my biggest fight right now was to put my socks on a wet pier in the morning. So there is a version of cold plunging that may look great on camera. Golden light, still water, slow exhale. And I've been doing those. Make sure to check the channel if you want to see more of those. But today this was not that. Here is the thing. I went in anyway. I could have walked. Every reason was valid. Too shallow, too much sand, too close to the road, too cold to change properly, not everything that I expected, new conditions. But standing on that pier, the decision is made pretty fast. Too many things can go wrong, but I don't care. I just decided to go, like many other people on that same morning. Pretty interesting because many studies look at the beneficial effects of cold plunging, of cold water immersion, on inflammation, on stress response, on sleep quality. But what if you were to measure the actual conditions when it was absolutely beautiful or more challenging? Because the impact is not the same. But the outcome somehow makes you feel good. And again, your body does not the same work in 50 centimeters water, or where you can immerse your body pretty quickly. The dopamine still floats, and the cold still does what cold does. The body does not care if the plunge is imperfect. Only the mind cares. So after that cold plunge, I walked back up the pier. The fog was still there. So I left with my wet hair on my beanie hat. My sandy feet were now dry. My clumsy fingers trying to get warm. And it was the most imperfect cold plunge I have done. And I had not planned for it. What is for you an imperfect cold plunge? How would you define it? Would it be the depth, the temperature, the external conditions, the mindset? I would love to hear your thoughts. You're very welcome to leave a comment and I'll make sure to respond. By the way, I'm just an ordinary guy who really happens to love the cold and water. Thank you for watching and see you in the next episode.